Tonight, Rick and I are going to share a lot of tricks and tips about traveling with folks who have sensory processing disorder or autism. Um, Specifically, we are coming at it from our own perspectives as parents. However, a lot of the information you'll hear tonight would be absolutely relevant to like a self advocate or anyone who has, I would say, even like some anxiety. Um, so, with that, I'm Kirsten Barnard. I've been working at the Autism Community Store for a couple of years, and I have a 17-year-old high school student now on the autism spectrum, Declan, and Veronica is my daughter, and she's 15. And those are some pictures of us on some trips in Colorado. We did a couple of years ago, like right when you could kind of get out from the pandemic, we went to um, the what's it called? Mount Princeton Hot Springs, and that's the swimming pool picture. And that was a really great experience for us. And then the last summer we tried the sand dunes in southern Colorado, and that's a picture of my kids walking their dune boards up to those sand dunes. As you can tell, we survived. So that's me. Rick?
Hello, my name is Rick Smith, and I'm also a employee at the store, the Autism Community Store. I'm a program assistant, and I work alongside Kirsten a lot. And I am a parent to two children, one of whom is pictured here, and that's Morgan. She is 7 years old and is on the spectrum. And we got back from a trip to Disney, which is the photo on the far right. You see us spending some time there in a little quiet area together. And we went to Disney this last March, and I learned a lot about traveling with an autistic person on an airplane and how to navigate the airport and security. And I have to give a lot of credit to my wife, who discovered all kinds of tricks and tips that we'll share with you tonight on how to make all those things a lot easier. But I've taken her to Disney, and I've taken her to water parks, and I've taken her on a whole lot of other vacations too, and they've all been a success. And every single time we've tried to increase the difficulty a little bit, and it's worked out to my surprise and my great pleasure. And so I would encourage anyone to take your kid on trips and see what it's all about, because unfortunately, according to a study by the International Board of Continuing Education Standards, only 13% of autism families surveyed take family vacations, which is really sad when you think about it. And 93% of those same respondents said that they would be more inclined to travel if autism services were available to them. Every single day, more and more services and special programs become available to people, and we're going to make you knowledgeable about some of them tonight. And they really make the whole experience nicer for everyone involved, not only the child, but the family and the caregivers too. And so this is some of the topics that we're going to be covering during our presentation tonight. We're going to be talking about preparation for the trip, like how to pick the best trip for you and your family, how to pack for that trip to take all the stuff that you need and stuff that can make the experience less anxiety inducing for you and your child, stuff to do for air travel and other transportation, lodging and destination tips, which are things, how to make your time at the hotel and the actual destination itself a little bit more tolerable. Some general mental and emotional tips to try and keep yourself sane along the way, which is important. And then also just some general tips. And this is going to be the order that we'll be presenting in from, beginning to end tonight. So first off, when preparing for the trip, it's important to consider your child's strengths and weaknesses and choose destinations that work with those strengths. You know your child better than anyone else, and you know yourself better than anyone else. And so you know what you're going to really be capable of and what's going to be asking too much. So you need to be realistic and try to choose destinations that are going to work with your child's strength. and try to avoid places where you know it's just not going to be a natural fit. Now, I don't want that to discourage anyone from, trying to push yourself, but some things are probably just not going to work out, and you know what those are ahead of time. So another thing that I would encourage you to do is to apply for disability passes before you go on the trip, including the DIS pass from Disney, should you happen to go there. Or if you're going to any other destination and they have some kind of special program, like I know Universal Studios and a lot of other theme parks have special programs and admission policies for people that are on the spectrum that makes the waiting in line process completely different for you. There's also a link here to autismattheparks.com, which has a lot of helpful tips for going to theme parks. And then I would also encourage you to find out what rides and attractions are accessible and appropriate for your child and prepare an optimal route throughout your destination. For my example, we knew that if my daughter saw the Toy Story World at Disney, that she was not going to be able to pull herself away from it. And so we prepared a route that made sure that we avoided things that were going to scare her and left the Toy Story World for the end of the day, where she would be able to run herself ragged and go wild there, and we wouldn't need to worry about trying to take her away at the end of the day to go do something else that we wanted to do. So try to figure out which rides or attractions or things that you want to do, and then prepare a route that's going to make you hit all those things in the right order. And then finally, I mentioned the DIS pass earlier for Disney, and this is one that really made our entire trip so much nicer. The DIS pass at Disney allows you to virtually wait in queue for lines, and that way you can be spending time in a restaurant or a gift shop and actually be waiting in line, so to speak, so that when you just show up to the ride, you get expressed to the front of the line and don't have to wait like everyone else. The other thing that's nice about the DIS pass is you also get rider swap, which allows you to, should you happen to get up to the line and realize that you or your child doesn't want to be able to get, or doesn't want to get on that ride because it might be too intense for you, but the parents do want to get on the ride, each of you can take turns getting on the ride and not having to wait in line, and the other person can wait with the child. And that way, both the parents get the fun of getting to go on the ride without forcing the child to get on something that might be too intense for them. And that is a really, really nice thing if you happen to, get up to Mount Everest roller coaster and realize this is just too intense for my child. There's no way they can get on this, but mom and dad still want to go. It still gives them an option. And I will hand it off to Kirsten for the next page.
Okay. That's amazing, Rick. I just really, I love that because it lets you have a bit of a vacation too, that rider swap. Parent and child prep. So, probably you don't want to start out by traveling to Disney your first time. You probably want to make some goals for yourself and your autistic family member, and start a little bit slower. Um, you know, Development and learning is going to really increase your capacity to take a bigger trip. Um, so what I would say would be, like for example, my family, we definitely have traveled a lot around Colorado doing, overnight, maybe just one night, or two, or uh, I can't say all. We did like a week long Colorado trip, and most of it was really great. But some of it was still hard. But there's something about having a car and a road trip that seems a little freeing, I think. You don't have to pay money to get in the car and go do something your child wants to do. So thinking about starting small and maybe doing some short Colorado based or wherever you're from based road trips would be great. Um, Another thing I would say is, if things go bad on a small trip, but your child then gains some learning or some skills, go ahead and try that again. It's hard not to be a little traumatized maybe by some things that went poorly, but try to think, okay, my child's 2 years older now, they've learned, or I've seen that there's some maturity there, so I'm going to go ahead and try this again. And then an itinerary would be an incredible, and it has been for us just really wonderful. Um, and I am talking about an itinerary for any trip you do. And that could even be a weekend trip to grandma and grandpa's house, because it really gives the person a sense of control and understanding. And of course, this is for, the one I'm showing you is actually where we're going this summer. Um, and it's for someone who can read and understand all of this. However, you can start an itinerary like you would a social story. You can put pictures, and a simple timeline, and simply show them how long it will take. You could put 3 clocks if it takes 3 days, or you could be very creative with an itinerary. So make it developmentally appropriate. And I believe most people want to have a visual to see. I mean, I know I do. So one of the things I was going to point out on this specific itinerary, and I don't know if you can read it because it's kind of tiny, but um, like I'm even saying like how long the tour will be at the Vatican, and also I've put in here like how many rooms we booked, because my children are teenagers, and so it's good, they'll like to know, oh, okay, there's 2 rooms, there's a little more space to chill out, we don't have to all be packed in there together. And we did that purposely. I would imagine many neurotypical families get one room and they smush in and get on top of each other and deal. And i I just figured if we could help folks have a really restful time in their room, and make that room a refuge, then everything else would be more pleasant, and there wouldn't be as much sensory overload and that kind of thing. So that's an example on here of like what we're doing. So that's my itinerary. A few more things for preparation. Rick, if you could change the slide. Thank you. um Watching walkthroughs and videos. This is really cool. I mean, I can't imagine doing this before the internet. There are videos, and I put one here on YouTube, but you can just Google, how to travel through an airport. And this one I posted is actually a puppet dressed like an airline pilot with a human, mom or something, woman, and they go through and they talk about what it's like in the airport. I know Rick and I both, when we took our children to Disney, we showed them the videos of the rides that they were going to be taking. You can show, um, if there's like a special restaurant destination, show the restaurant, show the pictures, show what the food looks like,
Right.
show what people are dressed like. Are you going to have to dress up? Well, show what that looks like. you know Use the tools that you use every day to help yourself with this planning. There's no reason not to use some of the things that you already know how to do really well. um I already mentioned food. Might even like taste some foods if you're gonna go and you're gonna have the most world famous, hot dogs, and or let's say Philly cheesesteak or something. Okay, if you really want your child to have that experience, you might give them a choice to see if they might want to try it in advance of the trip. Or you might say, you know what, we're gonna go to this Philly cheesesteak place on the trip, and I know you probably hate parts of the Philly cheesesteak. So, what would you like to bring with us to eat instead? So, offering choices whenever possible, about the foods, can be great. And you might be really surprised at what's on vacation that kids will try, or people who are kind of restricted in their interests. I remember being blown away and just so thrilled that in the Epcot Center France restaurant, my son was trying everything we ordered, and that was just really, really a happy moment for me. Um, so these things can be things of growth. I just really want to emphasize that. And I think Rick experienced the same thing. And then finally, marking your calendar. So it's another visual. You could actually print out just a countdown calendar and put it where you can all see it, and you can mark it off each day, maybe make it like a fun event every day, marking the days. And even, adults on the spectrum, I mean, people who have anxiety, again, it's really nice to just know, okay, here's where I am in the countdown. So I have 3 more yoga classes I get to go to, or, whatever it is, 3 more days of preschool. So those are some more tips for preparation that we considered. Packing tips are essential. I mean, packing is going to be a game changer. Um, Having a bag that has everything you need with you and not checked luggage or not like deep in the trunk of the car will be very helpful. Supportive things, again, stuff you use all the time at home, bring it with you. Sensory supports. You see, we put a picture of like a sensory backpack. Um, and just imagine being able to whip out a Chewy, or a fidget or ear headphones when something's unexpectedly loud could again create that capacity and that space for someone to be able to move through something that's difficult. Um, Sleeping stuff is really nice to have along because sleeping, I think and we know this because our last training was about sleep, 50 to 80% of people with autism have sleep problems. So bringing all of the things that help the sleep routine at home, if possible, as many things as you can, or replicating them at where you'll be sleeping is highly recommended. And I hadn't thought of this in the past, and we really had struggled in a lot of hotel rooms. But the pillows and the blankets and the stuffy, of course the stuffy, I mean, you're not going to forget that, but whatever the comfort items are, and not washing them in advance, so that again, I think hotels smell funny, and probably folks with pretty severe sensory needs might think the same thing. So just bringing in the things that not washed will probably provide some comfort. Again, food, if you can bring obviously the favorite snacks, comforting, just think comfort, comfort, comfort. Um, and then to keep you from, just getting exhausted before, your first day out touring or whatever, you might consider going ahead and getting groceries delivered to your hotel room, making sure there's a fridge in there, and getting it all set up so there's sort of like a sense of home there as well. Um, and then, of course, once you're out and about, you're going to want to have an extra change of clothes because accidents happen. They just do. And of course, this, but, and I don't just mean toileting accidents either. It could be getting a spill, getting wet. And some folks, again, just really can't stand being wet. So, whatever it is, pack extra clothes and probably a rain jacket.
Mhm. Okay.
Go ahead.
And in order to continue also on with more packing tips, this is some other things that we think are important to try and remember. And if you wouldn't mind, Kirsten, also, let's go ahead and share the PDF of all of the tips that we're sharing tonight, because I think this might be as many people as we get in the
Yeah,
room
sure.
tonight. So we have a actual like paper copy or a PDF copy for everyone. If you want to see in the chat, you can download it. So you don't have to remember all this stuff off the top of your head tonight. But don't forget to bring anything with you that you need, like prescription medications, safety gear, wheelchairs, anti-elopement equipment, et cetera, et cetera. For my family, the most important thing was the wheelchair. My daughter uses a transport chair that helps her get from one transition to another a lot more easily. Sometimes things just like crossing thresholds and going from an air conditioned space to an unair conditioned area can be hard for my daughter, and having a wheelchair, for some reason, it's a magical thing and it makes it where she can just go from place to place. And so if we hadn't had the wheelchair there, I don't know if Disney would have been even really feasible. The other thing that's really nice about it too is it keeps her from walking all day, so she doesn't get tired. And so like, I know we wouldn't have been able to do our whirlwind Disney tour if not for the wheelchair, because it made it just so much easier to get her from here to there. So next, don't forget to pack and use the same toiletry items that you use at home, including sunscreen, which is of course a very important thing to keep from getting sunburned. But a lot of people just have the idea like, oh, I'll just use the hotel soap or the hotel shampoo when I get there. And we all know that our kids' particularities can make that sometimes not a wise decision, just to go, oh, I'll just use whatever's there, because the scent or the texture or whatever it is just not right. And for that reason, they can't stand it. And, you know, going on a vacation is a series of coping with little changes here and there. And anything that you can do to smooth over those little changes helps. And so things like what Kirsten was mentioning before, like bedding and clothing and the familiarity of the smell of home, the kind of, you know, shampoo and soap and stuff like that that you're using is part of that. So don't try to change it when you're on the trip. There's no reason to. Kirsten already mentioned packing bedding with you, blankets and pillows, and not to wash them, because the smell of home is an extremely comforting thing. And I know on my trip, when we went to Disney and the water parks and every place we've ever gone with my daughter, including other just relatives' houses, having pillows and blankets that smelled like home really made a difference to her. And we also took the time, and I recommend to everyone else to do the same too, to write your child's name and your information, not just your child's information, but your information, including address and telephone number and stuff like that, on your child's clothing and personal items. You know, God forbid that you should be separated at some point from your child in the airport or in the park or wherever it is that you are. You know, my daughter is nonverbal, and so she might be able to answer what's your name, but she certainly couldn't tell someone else, you know, her mom and dad's name and their telephone number and address and stuff like that. So having either, you know, like a medical ID bracelet or, you know, a necklace, or just have it be written on their personal items can be helpful for staff or security to be able to find you and, you know, shorten the separation between you and your child, which is obviously going to be incredibly stressful. So make sure you take the time to write your child's name and their information on all your stuff. That way they can be reunited with you as quickly as possible. So next, some tips for while you are in the airport. Now I know at the Denver airport, they offer a program known as the ARC Wings for Autism. And I think that's in other cities also, but it allows you to have an opportunity to practice going through airport security and even boarding a plane with your child. And then obviously you don't take off on the plane, but it's an opportunity to practice all of those skills, going through the airport, going through security, getting on the plane, getting off the plane. And every single one of those transition points can be very difficult for a person with autism. And this gives you just a little bit of practice to have that much more experience and make the stress level lesser on you on the day when you're actually doing it. The next thing that we also recommend, and that I did last time when I took my daughter through the airport, was registering for the TSA Cares program, which gives you a lot of helpful stuff for going through security with your child. A lot of helpful benefits. Number one, you don't have to wait in the long security line. You get moved right to the very front of the line. And you also can tell the TSA agents if your child is capable of going through the body scanner or the x-ray machine. And if they're not, then they will be just waved down with a magnetometer and be given a physical inspection by one of the TSA agents. And you can stay with your child the entire time. That way there's no separation between you or them. And that entire process is a whole lot less stressful. You know, for my child in particular, like I was saying, we wanted her to stay in the wheelchair. We didn't want her to get up and move around, because every single part of that was difficult. And we were also afraid that if she had to take off her shoes in the airport security line, that was going to trigger her getting completely undressed, because that's frequently a sign for her If my shoes come off, all the clothes come off. And so we were afraid that she was going to disrobe entirely at their insecurity. So we said, that's just not an option. And so they were very helpful. They were very understanding. And they said, we're going to help you. And they gave her, a quick pat down and a wave down with the magnetometers, and she was on her way. The next thing we also recommend that you do is to call either the airport or the airline ahead of time and let them know about any special accommodations that you might need, like boarding the airplane first or last, depending on which is easier for your child. This is also a time where you might want to reserve a wheelchair from the airport to get from your car to the terminal. Excuse me, to the gate of your plane. Pardon me. And the wheelchair is a lot, for my family anyway, it made it easier for us to get from point A to point B. But if you don't have one, having the wheelchair, they're waiting for you is a very wise choice. And you also might ask where they have available quiet rooms in the airport for while you're waiting for your airplane. I know that they do have one in the Denver airport, and these are getting more and more common in airports all around the world. So it's a nice place for you to be able to wait just in case the anxiety of, the airport itself and the hustle and bustle becomes too much. Something else that we also recommend is taking part in the Invisible Disabilities Program, which gives the person a sunflower lanyard, card, and card holder that looks like this. And we're going to be getting these at our store very soon to give out for the Denver airport. And these are a signal to TSA agents, airline personnel, other service people that are throughout the airport that the person that's wearing this lanyard has a silent and invisible disability, and I need to be treated, with a little bit more patience and understanding and that kind of thing. And it's just a program that makes it a little bit easier for people dealing with invisible disabilities. And next, we will deal with what happens on the plane.
Oh, thank you, Rick. And I wanted to point out that lanyard says no face covering required. That's just an example of something you could put on there, but it's not required. Some people just put like a squishy or a comfort item, a little stuffy or something on there. So anyway, on to the plane. So this is a part that I think if you're going to do this for the first time, I mean, this might cause a lot of anxiety for you as a caregiver, because you just, once you're on, right? So you are going to get through it. There will be an end. I just want you to know that. And you've probably experienced that before. But here's some tips to maybe make it go better than it has before, or to maybe make it go really good the first time. Some folks suggest flying during the times when the person with autism or your child will be sleeping, or like during the night or during nap time. I'm sure that will work for some families and that would not work for other families. I know it would not have worked well for the way my child needed to sleep when he was younger. Get a lot of energy out the day before the trip, exercise, and then even on road trips, don't just stop and get gas. Stop get gas and then maybe go over to the playground. Try to stop in a little town, rather than just like a highway pit stop, unless it has a playground. So just getting the opportunity for some of that proprioceptive work and just movement, it can be a real game changer. Um, you could probably look those up, on your route in advance as well. With a plane, so that's not a plane, but that's just something to think about. On the plane, thinking about your seat location, are you going to want to be near the bathrooms, or will that bother you or your child? Will you want to be in a place that can't be kicking another passenger? That's bulkhead seating, and that's something you could request in advance when you call the airlines. Do you want to have a countdown timer going to show the amount of time left on the flight, or like an hourglass type timer, whatever you use, or teaching your child how that's going to be? could be really nice if you're an adult and you just want to put it on your phone and that's helpful for you. I think that's a fantastic idea. Rick, I think you said you did that on your flight for yourself.
I do that for myself on a flight just because I'm a terrible aerophobe. So just having a countdown timer lets me know how much I have to do or how much I have left to endure on the flight. So that's for
Yep.
me. That's not for my child.
Yeah. So that can help you as well. Um, and if it just goes down in flames, not literally, but if your experience goes down bad, you just won't have to see these people again. It's okay. It's just what happened. And be gentle with yourself, your child. Try to go do something calm once you're off the plane. And so the plane is probably, just a place to just load up on comfort items, use those high reward activities like the phone time or the iPad time, like whatever it is to get through it, to keep everyone less anxious. That's what we recommend on the plane.
Yeah, the iPad for me was magic on the airplane because my daughter is mesmerized by Fruit Ninja. So thank God for the iPad.
um, so then we actually reached out to one of our colleagues who has a daughter who has pretty severe impacted disabilities, including autism. And they actually got like a scholarship or reward or something that they applied for through a foundation, and they got this trip to Disney. And because of our colleagues' child's needs, airline travel wasn't going to be an option. So they rented an RV, and she was kind enough to share how they did it. So, and some of the pros and cons. So, you've got it's like a house on wheels. You have lots of room to move. You can not have to check in and check out of a hotel. You can have uh, free admission to national parks if you have disabilities. You could do an RV trip to a national park. Um, and just even a pet can get in there. So like if you have a service animal, that would be a nice way to do that. Um, and of course you can stop because it is a car. So those are some of the pros. The cons, that it is also your car. So um you you may not be able to park it right where you want to because it's an RV. Um, Another thing is it's a little expensive, because it's about 50 cents a mile as of last year when they did this trip. Um, you will have to have generator. You will have to, have some energy expenses for cooking. You will have to shop for your food in advance, but that's also a pro, I think. Um, and then if you have soiling issues, you might worry about things needing to be replaced or losing a deposit or that kind of a thing. Or if you have a family member who is going to, destroy something because it's maybe it's a sensory thing and they want to pick at it, So there's some issues on that you have to think about. But it was a really nice eye opener to see that this family, who I believe never really imagined that they would be able to do a trip to Disney, did it. And I know the mom said she was exhausted afterwards, but also that it was really, really cool. So I'd be happy to share her information if anybody wants to like look it into an RV trip. I'm sure she'd be glad to talk to you.
Yeah. And
Yeah,
the
go ahead.
national parks thing is really interesting too, because if you do take the RV there, and you have a person that is designated as a disabled person, not only is your hotel, so to speak, kind of paid for because admission into the park is paid for, but also admission to the destination is paid for also. So it's kind of like a twofer to bring a RV to a national park, which is kind of nice. So finally, we wanted to offer some tips also about lodging and the destination once you finally arrive to where you're going. And I hate that some of these sound a little bit scary, but we have to keep safety in mind with our children. Of course, that's always paramount. So we recommend that you familiarize yourself with the environment ahead of time and try to identify any possible dangers of where you're going, which would include things like pools, parking lots, elevators and escalators, thrill rides, et cetera, et cetera. I know for my own daughter that she, like many people with autism, is drawn to water. And so it was very important for us to know where the pool was and that there was a lifeguard posted at all times and that there was a safety gate, et cetera, et cetera. But maybe at the pool, or excuse me, maybe at the hotel that you're going to be at, that's not the thing to worry about. Maybe it's a parking lot that's right next to a busy road. Or, if your child has wandering behaviors, are they going to wander onto the elevator or escalator and get onto another floor, and then you have to find them? So just try to be aware of where those things are and know what any possible danger might be ahead of time. Also, it's recommended that you know the location of any hospital nearby to the hotel and the destination that you're going to be. And this is especially true if you're going to a place that's rather remote, like if you're going camping off in the wilderness or something. It's really important to know where you're going, especially if you may not have cell phone signal to be able to look it up where you're going when you're there. So then something else that you might want to think about ahead of time too, when in the planning phase of the trip, is to call the hotel or destination ahead of time and let them know about your child's condition and arrange anything that might make it easier for you during your stay. And for my family, it was very important that we had a first floor room because we were going to be transporting my child with a wheelchair, and therefore, stairs and elevators and stuff, they're just an extra hassle to not want to have to deal with. So a first floor room was very important, but maybe that's not the right fit for you. If elopement is an issue, maybe being on a higher floor is better, because that way it takes just a little bit more time to get from your hotel room door to the lobby exit. Maybe it's a little bit more distance and separation. Maybe your child should be away from the noise of the lobby if it's too noisy, if sleeping issues are going to be disturbed. Like last time, in retrospect, with where we stayed, we should have not been so close to the free breakfast area, because every single morning we had a parade of loud children walking by our room, which woke my daughter up every single day. But keep those kind of things in mind. Is your child going to be up at night? Are they going to be, pacing or jumping on the floor or spinning in circles? Are they going to disturb someone underneath them? That kind of stuff that you might not think about in your own normal home, because you don't have to worry about those kinds of things. And then we also wanted to offer you guys some just general points of advice, which are good for, either a local trip or a long ways away trip. But some just pointers to think about before you go. And number one, you should practice with strollers, wheelchairs, or any other new travel gear before you go on the trip. There's nothing as infuriating as figuring out that something doesn't work the way that you thought it did. And there's nothing worse than, having the child be sitting in the device at that particular moment when you're trying to get it to work, when there's a great expectation that it's supposed to. So practice with everything before you go to familiarize yourself with exactly how it works, and go ahead and return it if it doesn't, get that taken care of, so it doesn't cause you any extra stress or strain, because Lord knows while you're on this trip, you're going to be very, very stressed out. Traveling, especially on an airplane flight with a autistic child, it was a very stressful experience for me too, even though it went well. Both on the coming and the going, I was very, very afraid that she was going to have a meltdown at any moment, but thankfully it never happened. So another thing that we would recommend is to allow your child to make choices about their preferences whenever possible. Your kid is just as stressed out about the trip as you are, even if they're not necessarily showing it. And so letting them have a measure of control over, food choices, or, do you want to go to this thing or that thing? Do you want to go to this show or that show? Letting them make choices about their trip is going to let them feel empowered in a way that makes them feel better about everything. And, of course, you want to alleviate the stress and strain on yourself too, and letting them have the measure of control over that means one fewer decision for you too, which is always nice. So before you go on the trip, if you're going to be going with other family members, or other caregivers, and, it's important to create a responsibility sheet for each caregiver and have a meeting to discuss your expectations for everyone before the trip. you want to make sure that everyone knows exactly what's expected of them and what to do in a crisis situation. Hopefully that won't arise, but everyone should know their part and everyone should know what's expected of them. So another thing that we'd recommend is that you create a checklist of required items before you go on each outing. And this became required for me on my trip with my daughter because it seemed like we always forgot one thing. And that one thing invariably was the one thing that led to a meltdown that day. And so we created a checklist before we went out on every single outing on our Disney trip. And we made sure that we had her noise canceling headphones, her sippy cup, because if she didn't have her sippy cup, she wouldn't drink the formula, even if we brought it and we made it, just as an example. And so making sure that you have every single one of those comfort items that your child is going to need is important. So, whether it's NASA or NASCAR, they use checklists. And the reason that they do that is that they don't want to forget things. And so you should use one too. So make a checklist that has all of the items for your child to make sure that you are going to have everything you need. Finally, try to keep any routines from home intact whenever you can. If you have a devoted snack time, if you have a devoted bedtime, try not to change these. The more things that you can keep the same at home on the trip, the more things are going to go more smoothly for you, because obviously change is extremely difficult for people that are on the spectrum. And the entire vacation will be nothing but adapting to change after change after change. So keeping those things the same wherever they can be are nice. And I will hand it off to Kirsten for the mental health advice.
Yes. Your mental health as a caregiver is very important. And as a traveler, if you're a self-advocate, um, and I want to go back to something on Rick's last slide that he talked about with the expectations. That is the expectations that you have for yourself. And I don't think I necessarily threw this on the slide, but you need to know for yourself what it is you want to get out of the trip. You need to talk to your fellow travelers about that. You need to talk to your autistic child if you can about that and find out what their expectations are for the trip. Because the more you guys all are on the same page about what the expectations are, um, it's just going to go so much better, and everyone's mental health is going to be impacted positively by that. I don't know how many times I thought my autistic child needed X, Y, and Z, and wouldn't like this and would like that. And I was like, oh, you don't need that? Okay. So expectations, managing that is wonderful. And of course, also the expectation should be that things won't go perfectly and that is totally okay. Like it's a win that you're doing this. Um, Go and do what you want, but always leave yourself like a release valve. I think someone put it one time, like it's your out, it's a way out. You have a plan for like one caregiver leaving with the child who can't handle it anymore and is struggling, and one caregiver who can stay. That would be ideal, but like planning the release valve, that again, that just it lets you know you're never going to get stuck. And I can tell you, my child with autism hates feeling stuck and hates feeling trapped, and that is a trigger. So the more we can not feel stuck and trapped, the better. Also, we as caregivers and family members who are on this vacation, it is our vacation too. So I have learned, like, I'll go ahead and book like a pedicure wherever I am, just like that's going to be my time, or I'm going to go take a walk, or dad's going to go on a sunrise hike by himself. Um, but if you can build in time, if you're lucky enough to travel with a couple of caregivers and just go decompress, that's a huge part of vacate. That's what vacationing is about. And you should be able to not feel resentful that you didn't really feel like you rested at all. Um, Give everyone grace, yourself, your child, um, the folks that are trying to serve you. It's going to help you relax and move out of of a tough situation quicker if you can just be like, you know what, we're trying our best here. Um, and little successes are really big, right? Um, so take time to appreciate what's going on too. You're seeing, and I know Rick and I both saw this in our children. Oh my gosh, I cannot believe we did this. Like we went to a restaurant and there was not a meltdown. Or, we went to a really loud event and the headphones were perfect and we were able to stay much longer than we even imagined we could. Um, I still remember my child threw up in the Uber on the way to Universal Studios because I think he got some bad milk at breakfast. I don't know. And you know what? We made it through that Uber thing and we got to Universal and had a really great day. And my child recovered and like was flexible and was allowed himself to be rinsed off. And we were that family that didn't bring extra clothes. So we had to kind of like rinse off his clothes. And gosh, that was a real positive place in my child's development and flexibility. So it takes courage and it's totally worth it, as Rick says, worth every tear.
Yeah.
Because
I,
there
I
may be
think
some tears.
a lot of people should challenge themselves to take their children on places, because the one thing that I discovered is that my child was way more capable than I thought she was. And, um, I knew in my heart that there were things that she could do, but I never really knew what the limit was. And to see her, you know, not just have a good time at Disney, but that thrive just like a regular child would, and be able to enjoy all the rides. And, that whole trip was so much better than I expected it could have been. And the entire time that my wife and I were in the planning process, I was poo-pooing the idea, saying, this is just not going to work. We can't do this. There's no way that this will possibly work. And she continued to say, no, look, there's lots of different ways that we can be accommodated on the airplane with this DAS pass at Disney and all the other systems. And after a while I said, okay, let's give it a go. And I'm so glad that I did, because it was such a learning experience and such a growth experience for her. And it was great to get to see her come out of her shell, on that trip. And I don't think it would have happened if we'd stayed home.
Yeah. And before I wrap it up, I want to say too, I mean, Rick and I are happy to talk to you individually at any time, about our experiences or like bounce ideas off you. You're welcome to call us over at the Autism Community Store, because we both have done a lot. Well, I've done a lot of traveling over the years and learned from my mistakes, and Rick has done a ton of research, especially on the amusement park Disney trip. So please use us. We'd like to say thank you to Julie, Ashley, JC, and Carol from DIA. She works with ADA there and is working on making DIA even more sensory friendly. So Carol Reagan is someone we'd like to thank for her advice as well, and telling us about some of the things that are going on at DIA. And we'd like to thank you for coming and learning tonight. Um, if there's any questions, we'd be happy to answer some questions now. I put a tip sheet that we made that's got what we said tonight basically, but a lot more, and some
Yeah.
more links in it. And if you cannot get that from our chat successfully, again, just call us at the store, email us. In fact, it's Kirsten at Autism Community Store,
And Rick at Autism
and
Community Store.
.com. Right. So I'll show that out one more time, then email us if you have questions. Does anyone have any questions or
I do.
sharing or anything? Yes, go ahead.
So my son is 17. So I've been dealing with this for 15 years. I'm an only parent. We've traveled extensively, but everything is by car. We've driven to Oregon, we've driven to San Diego, we've driven to Montana, all the way to Canada, so we love to travel. My issue is the last time I flew with him, we did a social story, which it was perfect, everything to expect. that all piece went beautifully. We flew to Canada because I have a family home there, which I'd like to be able to get to more than once every 12 years. Going there, traveling with a 3 and a 5-year-old, the 5-year-old at the time with autism, coming back, going through customs. You go through customs for the US in Canada. I had requested help. I'd requested a wheelchair and assistance, and I got none going or coming. And I had 3 suitcases and 3 carry-ons and 2 children to deal with going through customs. So on the way back, I decided to make it easier for myself, and I threw his backpack on, you know, the little belt. Well, before you knew it, he was having a meltdown, and he jumped on the carrier belt and went behind those
Oh gosh.
flaps
Oh no.
Wow.
to go pursue his backpack.
Right.
And I had a complete meltdown in the airport and was screaming at the people saying, "This is why I asked for help. You know, nobody would help me." I haven't traveled since because, I mean, and in the scheme of things, was it really that big of a deal? No. But the anxiety over that situation, we haven't flown since. And he would not even go to the airport to pick anybody up who was flying here into Denver. So that's the hurdle that I would like to try and overcome. I'm happy to hear that DIA now has the program that a lot of other states have that enable you to desensitize a person to the airport and the airplane. I'm also happy to hear you don't have to stand in line for the TSA, because we did, which standing in line is so challenging. So I'm happy to hear those things. It sounds like things in terms of air travel have improved significantly. So I'm happy to hear that. But I don't know if you have any suggestions other than partaking in some of those new programs that are available to get over this hurdle.
Yeah, I think the ARCS, what is it? I forget the name of the program. I think it's ARCS Wings for Autism is the practice through the airport program that we were talking about. And I would probably just try to take that one as easily and as slowly as I possibly could. You know, maybe for the first couple trips, just drive to the airport and drive away. Just get them used to even being at the airport. And then for the next trip, maybe go up to the security line, but don't go through it. You know, just use a process of gradual desensitization, which I know for my own daughter, that's extremely important. I can't expect her to go from point A to point Z all in one go. I have to go from A to B, and then from A to C, and then from A to D, and then a little bit more each time. And that's maybe what I would recommend. And I would say, you know, I'm really sorry that your experience was as bad as it was back then, but the airports and hotels and just destinations in general are becoming more and more accepting and accommodating every day.
I mean, every place we go, like they, you know, inevitably somebody says, "Does your son have autism?" "Oh, I have, you know, my cousin's brother's uncle, you know, has autism," and always ask for first floor because of he makes a lot of noise and he gets up early. And we had a complaint one place we were staying. And we recently just stayed on the 21st floor and he was like, "Wow, they didn't give us the first floor this time." Like he didn't realize that I'd been the one arranging it every single time. So that was pretty funny. But I think that those are really good suggestions. I do feel like it's almost harder the older they get. I know you focused on development, but he's over 6 feet tall and 225 pounds. So he isn't as easy to manage when he has a meltdown as he was when he was 5 years old, when I could just pick him up and restrain him.
Yeah, it's a lot easier when they're 7.
Yeah, it is. It totally is. So, you know, it's it is really hard, but I'm really happy to hear of these new programs that are being developed to be helpful. I appreciate that. I appreciate hearing about that. So thank you.
And my thought is, again, I am so sorry about your traumatizing experience. And I believe that my own self, I have to go, I am a mental health professional. I am a licensed social worker. So
So am I.
oh, you are? Okay. So you
Yes.
understand the mental side of this, the emotional baggage, no pun intended, is
Yeah.
there probably
Yep,
for
it is.
me. And I still work through it before traveling because of some really sad, hard things that happened. And so I feel you. And just if there's any resources that you use for yourself, maybe that will help you take the next step with your child.
Yeah, maybe. We'll see. I also want to say we did do Disney World 12 years ago, and it used to be even more accommodating, to be honest. All you had to do was have a pass, and you went in through the exit and you got on the ride, and you could just stay on the ride and flash the pass, flash the pass, flash the pass. And people were renting people with disabilities so that they could get the pass. So Disney did away with that program.
Yeah. I can understand that. I mean, I will say that having my child be disabled and going to Disney, I felt like we got treated way better than everyone else that was a guest at that place. And Disney already treats its guests extremely well.
No, I agree.
And so having the DAS pass and getting to do the rider swap for rides that were just too intense for Morgan, not having to wait in a line, I mean, that made our trip 10 times nicer than it would have been otherwise. And we did 10 times more than we would have otherwise also, because we didn't have to wait in line.
Right.
So, you know,
The
it was
lines were
incredible.
Yeah.
And I know Universal Studios has something similar, and I'm sure that many other places have another thing like that too. And if you check our link for the I forget, it's on,
Elitch's does.
yeah,
Elitch's does locally, and
right.
You know, they're very accommodating.
Right.
So. Also, the state of Colorado has a disability pass as well that's free. So you could get it at any Colorado State Park.
Oh, okay.
For
I didn't
free.
know that.
Yeah, you have to physically go, like you can't go to a park and get the application, get the pass. You have to physically go to the headquarters, I think, downtown to get the pass. But yeah, you can get into any of the 50-something state parks for free.
Well, that's something for other people to do.
Okay,
That's
so
great.
state parks, cool. I did not
Colorado
know
State
about
Parks,
that.
yeah.
That's
And there's
great.
some great state parks here in Colorado.
No, they're wonderful.
Yeah.
Great hikes, great places. So
Any other questions or comments or things to learn? Because we don't know it all.
Yeah, or if someone has something to share that they learned on their
Yeah.
trip that they could help anyone else with, we'd love to hear it. Or not, maybe not.
your lists were pretty comprehensive. I mean, preparing, like I said, we did a social story when he was 5, and him knowing every single step, like, okay, now there's going to be an announcement and you're going to have to turn off your electronics on.
Mhm.
Well, you know, then the captain will get on and he or she will tell you that you can turn your electronics back on again. And so preparing for the flight every step of the way.
Right.
And then having any sort of gadget, toy, what have you, that when they get bored with the one, you can switch it out with another one.
Right.
Going to Disney, there are grocery stores that will deliver to your room there. And I had diapers and pull-ups delivered, so I didn't have to bring them with me on the airplane.
Mm-hmm.
And
And those are bulky. You don't want to pack them.
Right. And then I had all the snack foods delivered to the room too, so that we had all of those there and I didn't have to bring them with me or buy them there on site, which would have been a lot more expensive.
Yes. Right. Yeah.
So,
Very good tips.
yeah.
Yeah, I wish I would have thought of that when I went to Disney. My husband, I know, hiked down the road to some grocery store.
Well, I have
Oh,
a friend who's all about Disney. She's been to Paris. She's been to the one
oh,
in Asia, and she had all the tips for me before I went. Mousesavers.com is also a
mhm.
really good reference too.
Sarah, you're asking about any lists for the DIA stuff. Rick, do you know if there was any list specifically right now
I know
for
there was
DIA?
there's a few links to like our Wings for Autism and for the TSA Cares program at DIA. I mean, that's all TSA. I mean, throughout the entire United States, but those are both in the PDF that is in the chat, and there's links inside it.
I can, if you didn't here, I'll just paste that one more time to make sure. And if
She may
you
have
have,
joined after.
Yeah, I think she joined
Yeah.
after.
okay.
Go ahead and post it one more time.
And I know you said you could request the bulkhead, but you know, when you do your flight arrangements online, oftentimes those aren't available.
Mhm.
So
That's
you're
something you should
suggesting that
call.
you call? Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
definitely call and just go ahead and tell the person, you know, that you're speaking to that my child has disabilities or autism or whatever they have, and let them know, you know, we're going to need some special accommodations, including perhaps a bulkhead seat, maybe a wheelchair escort, you know, some other things, anything that your child needs. That's the time to address it. And I wouldn't try to do it through the online reservation system because it's just too much to discuss. So anyone else got something?
I see, okay, you can only see the second page of the list in the PDF. Uh-oh. In the PDF, that's only the second page.
Let me make sure that's
Oh,
okay. Let me repost it real quick.
okay.
Chat. Okay, check that one and see if it's the entire document.
Yeah, it is.
Okay, cool. Glad to help.
And again, if there's any issues, we could always email it out.
Right, and we can give you a physical copy at the store too if anybody wants to have
Yeah.
one too. So
Yeah. So thank you all for coming tonight, and we would love to hear your success stories, because we'll add it to our tip sheet. You know, like we want this to be a living, breathing document. So if you guys ever want to add, and I think I'm going to add some things based on what we heard tonight as well. So
yeah, and I'm sure there's some tips out there that we don't know. So please feel free to add them.
thank you all.
Thanks so much.
Have a good night.
Bye-bye.